Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Welcome into the studio this morning, Waikanae Ward Councillor and Chairman of the Finance Committee for the Council. It's Michael Scott. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nigel, and happy Easter.
Oh, same to you, yes. I was expecting you to bring in a big armful of Easter eggs and that, but you've eaten them all.
Well, I have been doing a little bit of Easter egg eating practice. It's something you need to ease yourself into over a week or so leading up to it.
Yes, that's dead right. We'll get into them tomorrow.
We certainly will.
Yes, gosh. And your business is flat out, you're saying? Absolutely snowed under?
Yes, we are working very hard, although I've decided that because it's a long weekend and there isn't another one after this until June, that my staff are all going to have Tuesday off as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just to give them a bit of a longer break. I think it's important at this time of year. Some schools are off. We've got teacher-only days, and it's just easier to be closed. And
sure.
That way one can recover from the Easter eggs of the weekend.
Yeah, that's dead right. Now, last week I was talking to the chair of the Waikanae Community Board, Jocelyn Bravanoff. We were talking about the angle parking, the decision being made. But a gentleman rang me up, or sent me a text, and then I printed it out. He said, I listened to the discussion about angle parking and wondered why we can't adopt two methods used in some Aussie states. Angle parking fits twice as many vehicles into a similar size for parallel, so why not change it slightly to cover the safety concerns? The only change required is to change the angle of the parking space toward the direction you leave to join the traffic instead of the angle you come from when arriving. Now that requires a parking vehicle, this will be interesting, to reverse into the space and drive out with the driver looking at and on the same side as the oncoming traffic with a clear view. By the way, it is illegal and you get a ticket to drive forward into these angle parks in Aussie. Drivers must reverse in. So that's an interesting comment, isn't it?
Yeah, country New South Wales, you back into your car parks.
Yeah.
But you're talking about extremely wide streets.
Yes.
You're talking about country towns like Ballarat and places like that. That was actually considered in the reports.
Oh, yeah.
But the area that you would need is even larger than the angle parks to turn in and back out of, because you have to stay in the lane of traffic and then back into the angle park. So look, I think the answer is we haven't heard the last of the parking problems in Waikanae, because of course there's only a certain amount of money available, and what people are suddenly realising is that that's going to mean that the mudstone wall will have to go. What's going to happen to the Waikanae sign? What's going to happen to the trees that are all on that end of Mahara Place there, that eastern end of it? So there's a lot more to go under this bridge yet. Look, I think the decision we came up with is fundamentally flawed. It would have to be, because Council immediately then passed a resolution proposed by Councillor Elliott and seconded by me that we're asking NZTA and our staff to make the program that they just adopted safe. That speaks volumes.
Right. I mean, the main concern was cyclists, wasn't it? And I see last night's Kapiti News, the butcher there, he's sort of kept a check. He says very few cyclists pass through there, except on the weekends. And then he says, well, a lot of those shops are closed anyhow on the weekends.
There was one yesterday afternoon when I came back from court about 4 o'clock. He was in the outer of the two lanes heading north with a truck right up behind him, and he was doing 30 k's, I so, just pottering through and holding up all of the traffic. So I'm not quite sure what he was doing, but the phrase temporary New Zealander did zip through my mind momentarily.
Now, can you clarify the rubbish collection system for us? Because we had a few phone calls about that. People didn't realise that Enviro Waste took away your green recycling bottle bin if you haven't arranged to be part of their deal, I suppose. I'm not sure.
So look, if you go back a few years, KCDC was in the rubbish business. We had our own trucks, we had our own bags, we had our own team, and basically I was chairing the community board back in those days, and I can remember sitting round the council table having the discussions as the cost of bags rose and rose and rose, and we were tipping more and more ratepayer money into subsidising the system, and council made a conscious decision based on cost to contract it out to private contractors. Currently there are 5 contractors in the Kapiti district who are licensed by KCDC to collect rubbish. What that's done is it's driven down the cost of collection, and it means that we no longer rate for rubbish collection. So I think one of the issues is if people want us to get back into the rubbish game, then it's going to cost another 2.5% on your rates. So we're going out to consultation at 4.7. I've already indicated that my figure would be end figure somewhere about 4.3. Add 2.5% on that, we're back up to 7% rate increase. Now nobody's going to wear that. The answer is that we don't own our own landfill. So we would have to enter into a contract with that. It's easy to buy some used trucks and half a dozen staff and start printing bags, but at the end of the day, council can't compete with the private operators who do this, and they provide a great service. We found out that the bags were being phased out, Nigel, because a couple of bag people had been killed. A couple of people hurling bags into the back of crusher trucks had picked the bag up and got it round their wrist. They'd hurled the bag in and they'd followed. So OSH have said this is a pretty unsafe practice. That's why the provider here was getting out of bags. And if KCDC were to be forced by its ratepayers, enough of them said, look, we want you to get back into the rubbish game, and we're prepared to pay, we wouldn't be doing bags, Nigel, we'd be doing wheelie bins.
Right. And
we don't own any wheelie bins, so we'd be needing to hire or buy them. This is just a sinkhole down which you pour rates money. So I'm happy for red bins and Lucy bins and green waste and clean green and waste management to keep coming and doing the job. Look, there's all sorts of variations. Lucy's bins, for example, will do what they used to do in Wellington. They'll come to your back door, pick up your bin, take it and empty it and take it away, and then bring it back if you're aged, infirmed, if you've got a health issue or something like that. Some other collectors will bring you a far smaller bin than the massive bins that some of us have. They'll collect them every 2 weeks or every month. There's all sorts of machinations there you can have. Some of them you can stick everything in, some only household rubbish. It's about talking to your supplier and making a deal with them, and what we're hearing is that this is a business game, and most of the businesses are quite happy to talk turkey. You might notice in Waikanae, for example, that all of a sudden there's a sea of red bins and not so many green ones. That's because the red bin operator did a deal, went round and said, how about you change and we'll give you a massive discount. Over the years, my costs for rubbish have gone down. Every year I've renegotiated it because the deal just gets better.
So that's up to the individuals now, if you're using the plastic bags, to renegotiate a deal with one of the collectors.
One of the collecting companies, you can ring them or go on their website. What was recently said to a Waikanae constituent who spoke to me was, when they rang the bin company, yes, we can give you a deal now, but there's a better one on the website. Sign up for it, you pay with your credit card, and we'll come along. We know of a couple of groups of people, for example, who are pooling one bin for a cul-de-sac. So they're saying, look, we all are recycling like crazy, we're all composting and that sort of stuff, so we'll get one large bin, we'll all put some money in, one person will be responsible for it, and we'll put it out each week, because that means that we're all putting a bag in. It's about being creative, but really, I don't want to see council back in this game. We can't compete, is the bottom line, and it will simply be a big cost on ratepayers. And for those people who are saying the organisation's too big, we're going to take on more full-time staff if we're going to have to be in the rubbish business.
Sure. Any other ideas of privatising other areas of the council?
So look, we used to privatise pools. They were privately run, and we took those back in-house because that was something that we could actually run more efficiently. We've also taken dog control back in-house more than it was, because of the feedback about weekends and the need to have staff available. We are always looking at ways to do things better and at a better price. It's interesting, for the last 5 years we've gone out with annual plans or long-term plans and said, are there areas that people want to cut back on? Are there areas that we heavily subsidised, like pools and libraries, that we could cut the subsidies back on, and the answer resoundingly is no. We like subsidising those. We think they're a good idea, and we think that the services that council does are good. We don't want to cut them back. So we're in that cleft stick. We're going to spend about 3.8% of our rates standing still. By the time we renew things and make sure that things keep working. So there's only going to be a couple of percent there for the new things that everybody wants. And we're out there for the LTP now. Absolutely guarantee we're going to have wish lists come in from people who are going to say, look, we want you to spend more in different areas. And the fact of the matter is that we are spending less, we're paying back more, and we're closing the depreciation gap. There's still $5.8 million of unfunded depreciation, which means we have to borrow to fill that gap. So that if we want a new library in Waikanae, if we want a seawall in Paikokariki, if we want to update the Mahara Gallery, if we want to do things in Paraparaumu down at McLean Street, we need firstly to close that gap. And that's what this council is doing, as well as keeping an eye on spending so that I think 4.3 is where we'll probably end up, 4.4, somewhere around there, because councillors are not going to artificially drive this down for election year next year. We're going to stay the course.
So does this help cover some of the stormwater that we've got to spend money on this 4.3?
We still have a great deal of money being spent on stormwater in next year's budget. Right. What council's done is, in the annual plan, is we've gone out and said, look, the old stormwater plan was 65 years to deal with it. We're bringing that back to 45 years. Now, of course, everybody says, oh, God, 45 years, it's a lifetime. And it is in the lifetime of a council. But there's $240 million we could spend tomorrow on dealing with stormwater, and I suggest that we could probably then spend that much again and still be faced with a bit of an issue.
Right.
So it's about affordability. Now, the commitment is, if water comes into your house, we're going to fix it. And we're going to do that as soon as we possibly can, and those are the priorities for next year. If water comes into your garden, then that's going to be lower down the line, and if water floods in the street, well, we'll do our best, but we've got to spend some money on other areas.
So people can still put in for this year's ratings, bring it down, or is that too late now?
No, look, the annual plan is out there. Sorry, the long-term plan is out there, and we want to hear about rates. Right. What we're trying to do is do a balancing act on those rates currently to try and make it fairer, so that we have commercial paying a bit more. We've got our people paying not only residential based on land value, but also all of the other mechanisms being used. So instead of it simply being nearly 80% of rates on the neck of the ratepayer themselves, we're trying to spread that across those people who can pay.
Great. And just before you go, we got the Waikanae market on Saturday.
Yes, we better talk about Waikanae, I suppose, rather than the district as a whole.
Yeah,
but
nice
of course,
to talk about the district as a whole, though, because it does affect us, like the rubbish we talked about, how it could affect the rates if we want to go back into it. So it's all part of it. So let's now talk Waikanae then.
And of course, we've got our fabulous market organised by the team. Destination Waikanae is Sue Lusk and Sonia Coombe and her team have done just a fantastic job getting it ready. We're oversubscribed for stalls. All we need is the weather gods not to rain, and Saturday will be just another glorious day in Waikanae. Parking will be at a premium, and I understand that there are no trains running across the district throughout the weekend, so it'll be buses. So hopefully there might be a bit of car parking available.
We'll be in the new car park there, won't it?
Absolutely.
Use that.
And so, look, it's always a fabulous weekend in Waikanae. The changes that have been made already in the Mahara place are working really well. We've got another piece of that artificial grass going down just to extend that square a bit, but I'm really excited about the market. We've got a bigger conversation to have, and that's what happens down at Park Avenue with that market. Yes. And I think that one of the big issues is we need to see what the government's doing in relation to those crazy food vendor fees that they put out there. That needs to be changed.
Right.
difficult to see how you can charge $1,300 for somebody who makes a dozen pots of jam and sells them. But that's a conversation to be had.
Right. Because you had the council food inspectors down there last weekend, didn't you?
They were going to come and then they didn't, and I think that was relatively sensible. I think that seems to me that there needs to be a better conversation. We need to understand, firstly, what the Minister's going to do about changing what was the legislative framework.
Yes.
It's simply far too much for far too many people to even contemplate. At Waikanae, we've got a number of people who already have food service licences because the food is made at their premises and brought there. So there may be a few people that we need to deal with, but it seems to me that a far more collegial and helpful approach, rather than a whole lot of staff in glow vests descending on the place, making it look more like a paramilitary organisation. Let's just treat people carefully and get to yes.
And they can tackle you on Saturday, Michael, when you'll be in the square there eating a sausage and an Easter egg. I'm sure you'll be there.
Look, I certainly will be. I'll be taking Mum after her hairdo, and she found the donut people last time.
Oh, God.
And you could get hot donuts with ice cream and caramel sauce.
Yes.
And I have never seen caramel sauce spilt in so many places, but it was fabulous.
Good on you. Have a nice Easter.
And you, Nigel.
Michael Scott, Waikanae Ward Councillor and Chair of the Finance Committee here on Beach FM.
106.3 Beach FM.